Hey everyone, welcome to the channel and welcome to this part 2 of taking a look at this Leo full moon energy, which has been kind of interesting. I would say that I kind of put off this part 2 because I was bogged down with other things, and that is a theme with this energy that I'm looking at. So I made some notes today. I looked at the chart to kind of connect the tarot part of the reading into an astrological somewhat of an analysis so I was hit with like a wave of fatigue after I did the reading, and didn't really have much motivation to do much at all other than, you know, the chores that I had to do, the absolute like basics of the things that I had to do, and then the rest has just kind of taken a back seat. But I feel better. I feel more energized today. Today is the 30th of January. I'm in Sydney. So we're a few hours after this, maybe like a day after this full moon energy that I'm recording part 2. And what I kind of was drawn to was Vesta in an opposition with Neptune, and Ceres conjunct Neptune. So Vesta in Virgo, which is all about dedication and common comforts within the family or within a society and a collective, and the dedication to sort of look after society or the common interests, the common comforts of everyone. This dedication for peace and a productive kind of domestic life in the sign of Virgo, which is all about improvements and being able to see the details and analyze things and really kind of focus in and make plans for the long term on the improvement of a situation. So that's feeling like a burden with this opposition of these new rules that have come in, or some shifts of transfers of power, shifts in positions, things like that. Find the hidden positive influences that wouldn't be obvious to us if we were operating from the lower chakra, from the lower instinctual energy centers of the body. So we wouldn't be able to see these hidden positive influences that are not obvious if the ego is overactive. So there is a situation here maybe people are dealing with where something has gone from one extreme to another, and it has the energy of playing by some new rules. And so this could mean that someone was stripped of their title, or there were some hidden power struggles going on, because Ceres is related to Pluto. There is a energy with Ceres of having something stripped away or something basically taken. So there could be some hidden power struggles, someone losing their title, someone kind of being stripped of something. And this could possibly be between people who have a lot of yin energy. So the hidden positive influence, if we're not acting from the ego, or I should say overactive ego, because having an ego is healthy, but if it's overactive, we kind of get into these power struggles. So what it's saying is that there's a hidden positive opportunity and influence that can be found. When I was saying that there was something that could be found within the own light of your positive energy, this is where this transmutational magic comes in, because you are shifting your own energy and reaching for higher frequency, opening up to higher frequency in the middle of a power struggle or a shifting of power, or the transfer of something that has to do with that. The hidden gem of it is the dissolution of the power play or the power struggle. It dissolves because Ceres is conjunct with Neptune, to ride this in a positive way would be to allow something to dissolve rather than allow your ego to become overactive in the situation, which is highly possible with Mars and Lilith, with Uranus squaring both the moon and the sun. It actually squares a lot of things, which I'll get into later. This hidden positive influence you can't see it with your ego. So if your ego is overactive, you'll miss this completely. If you are in a position where you're thinking that you have more knowledge, you have more wisdom, you have more experience, or you have more of something, more beauty, more something better than someone else, that is the ego being overactive, and these power struggles basically karmically going to rip people apart. They're going to be stripped, ending up in situations where they possibly could have their title taken from them, or what they perceive as their title, or their entitlement. So there's a lot of that I saw, which is a good reminder, and that's probably why I kept saying to not allow the ego to take over in any situation where it's like you're not comfortable with something. You can be uncomfortable, we can be uncomfortable, and bring about a positive change by allowing something to dissolve in the situation rather than fighting against it. There's also like an extreme flip of desire, where you could have really been turned on by something or someone in whatever capacity, whatever way, mentally, physically, emotionally, and then you suddenly find yourself on the opposite end of that and being kind of repulsed by the person, or just not as so interested, which strips the other person of their title. They may not even know. They may not have been consciously aware of how you thought of them. But the thing is that there is this, if you're having this shifting of opinion about something or someone, or shifting of a desire where it's just completely the opposite now, you're taking your power away from that thing or that person. And when you open up to higher frequencies and get out of the ego being overactive, that's when the magic happens. And this opportunity and finding things and attracting some good luck actually is activated. So this is pushing through to create momentum in a really kind of courageous Leo, strong, determined, intuitive and sharp-minded Aquarius kind of way, creating this momentum into some kind of sense of healing and peace. That stream of energy of understanding and being aware of what's in your best interest, that isn't harming, because what is in your best interest wouldn't harm anyone. And so that stream of energy has to flow smoothly in whatever system. So we're trying to find, we're maybe in situations where we're trying to find what's in the best interest of the group or the collective or the family or community, so that everyone is on this stream of free from kind of being overwhelmed unnecessarily by things brought on by the collective circumstance. So this delayed outcome may have been just in the last few days, because I did experience that, and it did feel like I was kind of bogged into kind of heavy energy, which I feel is now lifting. And I do feel like that was a Saturn influence that goes in line with what I said about feeling back on top again, back on top of the world, by trusting in your intuition and also using the lessons that came with that. I want to go back to Ceres for a moment and read something from, this is just from mythopedia.com, about Ceres itself. The Roman goddess of fertility and agriculture, Ceres was the patron of farmers and protector of the plebeians. Adapted from the Greek deity Demeter, Ceres was worshipped as the mother of Proserpina, or Persephone, whose abduction by Pluto was a central episode in Greek and Roman mythologies. In the early days of Rome, Ceres was the chief member of the plebeian Aventine triad, a cult of three deities worshipped by the common folk. The triad's humble facilities on the Aventine Hill stood in marked contrast to the palatial grandeur that marked the nearby Capitoline Hill. So in that, there's definitely the idea of two extremes. Ceres was the patron and protector of farmers, pastoralists, and plebeians. She was also the overseer of the elected officials known as the tribunes. So Ceres is connected with agriculture, law, seeds, and civilized way of basically providing nourishment to all people. She was then the ultimate deity of the common people of Rome, whose bounty was thought to nourish. So this is some kind of deity who was basically worshipped by the common people at one point in Rome, and at some point in history had the title stripped. So they basically saw her as the ultimate deity, whose bounty was thought to nourish even the humblest of Romans. The common folk lavished praise upon the golden goddess and celebrated her at a number of festivals throughout the year. These festivals generally took place during the sowing and harvest seasons. The name Ceres has been traced back to the Proto-Indo-European root "cur," meaning to nourish, satiate, or feed. In addition to her given name, Ceres was known as Ceres Augusta, meaning Ceres the Great. The poet Virgil referred to her as Ceres Legifera, or Ceres the Law-bearing, a reference to her role as a bringer of peace. There are some indications that Ceres was associated with the cult of the so-called Magna Mater, or Great Mother. This title may have been yet another name for the Roman goddess. So this deity, called Ceres, held power over all the agriculture and bounty of the annual harvests, the harvest times, and generally thought to be a young woman, was usually presented as an adult of childbearing age, often carried a staff as a symbol of her authority, but would sometimes carry a torch as well. The latter item served both as an allusion to her search for her daughter Persephone and a symbol of enlightenment. So she had some kind of symbolic way to see something, to see into dark places. She had a vision, and she was searching for something to find her daughter Persephone, her most sacred gift, her most treasured thing. She was also commonly depicted holding grains of wheat and pulling a plow. So she was in a chariot of some kind. She was the daughter of Saturn, the god of the cosmos, who ruled before the coming of Jupiter, and her sisters were Vesta, goddess of hearth and home, and Juno, the maternal queen of the Roman gods. While Ceres was not known as particularly an amorous goddess, she did have at least one affair. This dalliance produced her only child, a daughter named Proserpina, or the Roman counterpart to Persephone, who was known for her beauty and purity. So it goes on to talk about the myth of the abduction of her daughter and her relationship with Pluto. As lord of the underworld, Pluto spent his days in solitude and grew lonely. Venus, the god of love and sexuality, took pity on Pluto. We have Venus conjunct Pluto right now at the moment in Capricorn, which is ruled by Saturn. So these old dark places that have not changed for a long time in society, in our own histories, So Ceres in Pisces basically is able, this is a chance to see into something within this realm of Capricorn with Pluto and Venus, and see how to improve it, see how to open up to a higher understanding of what can be changed, what can dissolve. But again, with it being in an opposition with Vesta, who is in retrograde and is closely linked with Ceres as a sister goddess, there is an opposition there, which is an ending. It's the ending of something between these two energies of Ceres, the nurturing kind of looking for the purity in a situation, looking for the thing that could be found in the darkness, in the chaos. This could be happening on a personal level in your life. This happened to me lately. Some things have changed, there's new rules involved. So we have to go back over, are we dedicated to this? How much of a burden is it? Is it comfortable for the group? Is it good for the group? Is it going to bring abundance and prosperity for the common good? So because we have Ceres, which is a deity that was worshipped by the common folk at some point in time, that changed. This also could be like something happens in a situation that you're involved in. Things change, the structure changes, and you don't really know why. You can't really see it. It's in Pisces, Ceres in Pisces, with Neptune. So basically what it's saying is to open up the vision of what's hidden by opening up to a higher frequency when that survival instinct kind of kicks in, where something kind of just changes and we're not a part of the change, we haven't been involved. This kind of stirs up that base chakra energy, which is connected in with Mars. So now I'm going to talk about these Mars aspects in relation to the reading that I did. So this, to me, looks like some transmutational magic of creating momentum and determination through the power of the Sun in Aquarius. Intelligent solutions expressed, intelligent ideas expressed that are going to benefit a group or a collective, while harnessing the strength and determination of the inner world, the emotional intelligence. So these two energies, Leo and Aquarius, in this full moon, is basically the use of light to bring in a good outcome, not just for the self, not just to put the self on some kind of pedestal or position of power, but to make sure that everyone involved is also being empowered as well. So there's kind of shifts happening here with transfers of power. Also, another thing with that Ceres Vesta is there has been layers of incorrect information, where I think that Vesta in retrograde, that's a dedication to going over things and correcting things. Basically, if there's a person in a position of power in your life in some way, and they are operating from this kind of egotistical platform, and they have the best interest of themselves and their own self-growth to power, that is going to be shifting because communities and families, I feel there's this energy of communities and families coming together to shift energy out of a disempowering energy, which means expression of views and people having common interests. These are coming to light. So just to talk about the companies that I mentioned for a minute with the King of Pentacles and the greed and the abuse of power and tricky communication, they use the use of words and concepts. That's what's coming to light here with this, because the full moon exposes things. And what I feel here is it's exposed use of words or concepts that actually disempower a collective, group, or community. They're kind of coming up to the end of the road where they cannot use words and concepts to basically distribute false information for their own greed and their own gain. So there is a collective empowerment that I think is significant to this full moon energy, where it's kind of like a balance of logic and intuition, seeing how things are actually being built, seeing the structure of things. We have Pluto with Venus Capricorn, which is also making an aspect of Vesta. So I think there'll be a number of institutions and companies where the people that are kind of not at the source of this disinformation, but those people in a professional sense will be looking over details, will be dedicated to finding the results of what has been going on a hidden level with the with this Capricorn energy. So on an individual level, what it also is saying is that we can find comfort, a comfortable place in a world of shifting energy and a world of different levels of consciousness. This is a gift of the Aquarian energy, of being able to kind of adapt to a lot of different energies and levels of consciousness, different opinions, ideas, concepts, and being comfortable in that very air-like world. The reoccurring offering of lower frequency that came up was products, foods, drugs, packaging. All of that is deceptive. We've known that for a long time, but I think that is the next thing to kind of start to change, because I personally think that those kinds of things, and while Ceres is in Neptune, conjunct with Neptune in Pisces, before that move into Aries in February, that companies that produce products and foods and drugs with deceptive packaging will actually kind of be stripped of their power somehow, some way, or the beginning of it. It'll be the beginning of that. So what it's saying is, despite the changes and the shifting of energy and the restructuring of things in the world on the bigger picture, that you can find a comfortable place within this changing energy by starting your own thing, doing something that requires some sort of determination towards your true dreams, energy of change, death, rebirth, transformation. So doing more research, perfecting the craft while this energy of Vesta is in Virgo, in retrograde, which will end about the middle of April and will go direct in April. In that time period from now until April, there is an opportunity to perfect something, to go over something, to focus in, to do research on it. Also with this Ceres energy, to release the guilt and other negative feelings. Some things are just on a perpetual cycle, and we need to see things as perfectly shifting and changing and recognize that these feelings are an accomplishment. Part of a bigger picture of life journey gets you to a higher ground. So while there will be a lot of new plans, new rules put in place by different people, different companies, organizations, things like that, we also can do that for ourselves. And trusting in the fact that the ego doesn't have to run the show. We don't have to run our lives through our ego to get what we want. But that will be mirrored to us through things in a bigger picture. And what is basically attractive to you for the long term? What would you like to accomplish that isn't really connected in with your ego desire? So kind of like conquering the illusions that you're trapped in some way. That's what the ego does, puts a lot of focus on these feelings of being a victim in some way, or being trapped, or something's unfair, which all these feelings are valid, but if we operate from that as a point of leading our lives, from that point of view of the ego, we just don't see the hidden positive opportunities and the hidden positive influences that the ego is blind to. So it's saying basically that the challenge here is to transmute this Mars energy, this desire to have things the way that you want it. You got to have some kind of balance between that and allowing things to change and evolve in your best interest, in the best interest of the community. So another thing that I was led to was something called Kykeon, Kykeon. And I found this through, my curiosity of the Ceres energy and this getting into some sort of chariot, and also the idea that came up in another reading of taking in some kind of poison. I found this really interesting Greek story about a beverage of water and barley or other various herbs, popular among the working lower class of ancient Greece. Kykeon is most famous, however, for its use in the rites of Demeter, which is, and for Ceres, Demeter is the mother archetype to Persephone, but also known as Ceres because of the connection with the birth and rebirth and death process that we go through with the seasons. It was used by these initiates to experience the mystery of death and rebirth. So these mixtures that they would drink had psychoactive properties. And they would do this ritual symbolic of death and rebirth, and would overcome the fear of death, basically. And the idea of this ritual was for understanding their life purpose. This was so important to this particular collective that the families who owned the land that the barley grew on, that they would make this potion out of. So you can kind of see a correlation with our current society, with that concept that the things that we ritualistically into our body and our energy, the food, the drugs, the drinks, whatever things that we actually use because we believe in it. So it's like so happened to be growing on private property. Someone already had ownership of something that was considered sacred to the collective. So, like, there's correlations here with the privatization of things that are for the good of the collective and important to the process of life and death. So Demeter, which is the mother archetype of Ceres, she searches the land, she searches in nature, she's always searching for Persephone, which is the daughter archetype. And the daughter archetype that represents innocent and purity, that was basically taken into the underworld. She searches for this reunion with Persephone. And I feel like as Ceres moves into each sign of the zodiac and comes in contact with the other energies like it is right now with Neptune, it kind of gives us a chance to really look at aspects like what you are truly searching for. So the story is about a disruption to a ritualistic custom. So there was an understanding that gods were at work all around them because they could see the daily proof of the god's existence through the budding of the trees in spring and the falling leaves in autumn. So this collective kind of worshipped the changing of the seasons. But the story is, it was like they were reenacting exactly what was going to happen. So the rites of Demeter were more than just a fall festival. They were the reenactment of Demeter's search for her missing daughter and the mystery rite, which took place in the underground temple of Eleusis, radically changed the lives of those who participated in it. So this is claiming that virtually every ancient writer, thinker, ruler, or builder, whose name we know today from the beginning of the rites in 1500 BCE until they were shut down and outlawed by the Christian emperor, these sacred kind of rituals were interrupted by Christianity. So it's said that Plutarch, which was an ancient wrote that after being initiated, he lost the fear of death and recognized himself as an immortal soul. The psychoactive ingredient of the ergot in the kykeon, combined with the ritual in the underground temple, produced a life-changing. The rites of Demeter had an incredible importance for those who participated in them, and kykeon was the key which opened the mind of the people to the secrets of their gods. So it sounds a bit like going on some kind of like ayahuasca type of pilgrimage to understand what we fear the most, which is death. So basically this is a story about people taking psychoactive fungi or plants and going through some kind of spiritual evolutionary process that involved things being done, things being said, and things being shown. I think that we choose our own pathway and that we're always in control, and that's that ego side. But the path is basically shown and open up to us by our frequency. And to move into different frequencies and into different pathways of life, it all depends on what we are doing, thinking, saying, and showing. For example, you may start out on a certain pathway with a certain goal in mind, and depending on what you do along that pathway, what is said, and what you see along that pathway will have an effect on your frequency. As your frequency shifts and changes, it opens up different pathways in different directions. So our frequency is actually what is moving us into different pathways. So when we have an awareness of our own frequency and the things that we do, say, and show to the world, and basically the motivation behind that, it can take us into some roads that are very interesting. And that is where I feel like the idea of judgment in religion comes from, where they say that a person who has unrepentantly done negative things or been on some sort of sinful path will only go into a certain area or stage of heaven, basically, or not even be allowed into that place. I personally think that whole idea is about frequency and free will. The idea of punishment is a egotistical, man-made kind of concept. And so if we find ourselves in some sort of self-punishment, and I've been in situations where I've witnessed people, things they've said, and how guilty they feel about things that they've done. Because I have a Scorpio moon, so I'm kind of like, I absorb the dark stories and some of the lesser known things about a person. I just kind of absorb those things in conversation. And so I've had a lot of friends who have struggled with being stuck in guilt or shame. And even I have been there. Like in my early years, in my 20s, I had to go through the whole process of understanding shame, the feeling of shame, and how that is a process of learning empowerment, self-empowerment and self-love. Just depending on what we do and what we say, what we see, who we interact with, it just changes our frequency and allows us to either open up to new frequencies, higher understandings of the self. So it makes me wonder about the Chariot card, gives new perspective on the Chariot card in the tarot for me. Every time I look at it now, I'm going to think about all the gods that drove or rode in chariots, and gods and goddesses traveled by chariot. But there were differences, like Ceres was pulled by a dragon-like thing. It's the concept of a yin energy with a yang energy moving forward. One of the stories with Ceres is that she became a sort of like a nurturing carer for a baby that didn't belong to her, and her strong belief and ideas of ritualistic purification into immortality by fire was disrupted because of the objection from the parents, and or something like that. It goes something like that. So she instead empowered the brother to be a teacher and gave him her chariot. So there is a correlation there with transfer of authority, transfer of power in a peaceful way. So that can be possible here too. Instead of being rigidly following a ritualistic process of gaining something or doing something, there's a shift into doing it a different way. That's why I feel like my attention was drawn to this Ceres energy in particular for this full moon. So definitely like a transfer of a struggle or a transfer of power to benefit the whole rather than just one's own personal rituals or belief system. And she gives him her chariot to distribute seeds of nourishment, the seeds of grain, to all of the lands. So these seeds go to a lot of people. The seeds of knowledge start to sprout in a lot of different groups and collectives. But that you could also see that on the flip side, the other extreme of something negative that is being distributed and poisonous. So that's kind of how I see it. I think I'm going to be calling this intuitive, philosophical astrology. And thanks everyone for listening. I'm going to leave it here. Wish everyone well, and I'll see you soon for the new moon reading. Bye for now.